Addiction isolates, shame separates, recovery reconnects us. The question isn't, do groups work? It's what happens to a human and the way that they connect when they participate in them. So do groups work? Well, research would indicate absolutely yes. There's lots of research out there. We'd encourage you to go look up statistics. People are more likely to maintain abstinence. Relapse prevention rates go down. There's better adherence to treatment plans and outcome. People feel more connected. There's an increased self-efficacy. There's a whole bunch of reasons why they work. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how they work, why they work, some of the myths and misnomers and understandings around them, so you can get a better understanding of why they're so important to your recovery. One of the greatest benefits that I'm constantly telling people about, there is sometimes an unseen psychological benefit to participating in groups. And for us and my team where I work, it's shame reduction. So we've talked about this before on the show about shame and the power that it has. And we know that it is connected directly to a sense of disconnection, not belonging, not fitting in. So at the same time, going to participate in a group and feeling a sense of disconnection could contribute to that shame. However, in order to learn how to overcome it, it is going and participating and doing it anyway. So it's like exposure. We're going to learn to overcome and change, our narrative through our participation in it. So when we go into a group and we walk in, one, just participating in the group alone and being and having a sense of belonging in it is useful in itself. But then when we look at addiction recovery groups, it is unheard of anywhere else that you would walk into a group of people and talk about things that you're shameful about, things that you feel disconnected or judged or feel poorly about. And we tend to think that talking about that behavior creates more shame, and the opposite is true. The moment that we get to talk about shameful behavior in an accepting way, shame is reduced. So when you walk into a room of like-minded individuals in a peer support or a 12-step meeting, something along those lines, and you say, hi, I'm Dean, I'm an alcoholic, and here's, things that I've recognized in my life that I'm not proud of and I'm working toward it, that moment connects you to the other people in the room who are having similar experiences. And this is an overwhelming sense of belonging, and shame gets reduced very, very quickly. In addition to, while we're in groups and talking about our experiences, we're sharing our emotional state, how we feel about those things that are happening. And normally, talking about emotions and feelings in itself also feels shameful. Talking about, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm worried, for some, it's disconnecting and it feels like they're not part of society, or it's shameful to express an emotional state. So when you're in a room filled with other individuals going through similar lifestyle experiences, and you see everyone else talking about their emotional states and how they feel, now we get to see what's happening with the other individuals and be like, oh, I'm not the only one. And really, that's what shame de-escalation is about. It's about, I'm not the only one, I'm human, I'm part of, I'm not separate, I'm not different, I'm not unwanted or loved. So this is a big part that I don't think people get. They think it's educational, or it's like a classroom setting where you go in and you just learn new information, and that's what the group's going to do. And it's more about the group itself sometimes than it is the content. So like I just stated, there is some learning to happen in a different way from groups, not just educationally. And part of that is humility. So when we walk into a group and we start sharing our own personal experiences, and we get to listen to other people's experiences, we start to recognize that I'm not the only one living in this world. And often when we're in survival mode, which I've talked about before if you've watched any of these videos, often we're in survival mode, and when we're in survival mode, we think we're the only person against the world. And when we step into a group and say, there's other people with the same thoughts and ideas, or other people that have different thoughts and ideas, even better, then there's a part of it that helps to create some humility, which I go, okay, I don't really know, what's going on, and I can see that there's different experiences happening with different people. This makes it so that my cup isn't so full with all the knowledge and the things I need to know. It opens me up to being teachable. So when I can go into a room and get different perspectives, and they're not coming from somebody else who's trying to tell me what to do, my boss, my parents, my, kids, or whatever it is, we can open ourselves up to say, hey, there's a different way to looking at this. And that humility is really powerful. And sometimes groups are the only place that people can find that. In addition to, when we walk into a room and we're practicing humility and we can openly admit to a bunch of people that we don't know all the answers, we are there to learn, we're there to be open and understand, and we can openly suggest that we don't know all the answers to all the things, then that helps us to feel safer and more connected. And we think it's the opposite. We think that when we admit that we don't know something, that we're going to feel judged, feel disconnected. And the reality of it is, if we're trying to learn and grow, we have to admit that we don't know something in order to learn something new. Doing that in front of a group of people that are doing the same thing makes it then very easy for us to learn and grow. There's a level of accountability that also comes with groups that I think is one of the key reasons why others may see the benefit of it. But if I walk into a room and I tell 20 other people what my plan is and what I'm going to do or where I'm going to be or my goals, the likelihood of me achieving those goals in some occasions can get worse if I'm not sincere. But if I'm sincere and I walk in and I'm clear with those goals and I share them with the other people, I'm going to have a sense of greater accountability and more likelihood that I'm going to follow through with those goals and the things that I'm doing. Also, those goals can get reinforced through peer encounters. So other people, when I go back to that group, are going to say, how are you doing with that goal? How have things been going on? You said you're going to do this thing. How's it going? That accountability can be scary for some people, but for many, it is the difference between whether or not they're going to achieve something or not. When we walk around and we have a narrative in our mind saying, I'm going to change something, and we keep saying, I'm going to change it, but I never do anything about it, hard for some people to get, but we start losing trust in ourselves because I don't trust my thoughts when I say I'm going to do something. So, but when I say it to a group of other people, I go, okay, I can trust that because I said it out loud. And we start rebuilding that accountability and trust with self by openly sharing that information. In addition to celebrations and participating in some recovery groups celebrate time through key tags or tokens, and those celebrations become a meaningful accountability. So some people will say, well, I've got this much sobriety, I'm not going to throw it away because I know that everyone around me has helped me celebrate this sobriety and they're aware of how long I've been sober for. And so I'm not going to throw it out the window because that's a level of accountability that I've already shared with the group of people that I have 3 months sober or whatever it is by picking up that token. So there's some accountability that comes with it, which is pretty great. The reason why we do the things we do is because we want to help you contribute to your well-being and recovery because we see how important that is. And if you want to invest in your own recovery more than just watching one video, click the subscribe button and like and interact with our content so that we can have much more of the same things in the future. And if we know that you're engaged in it, we will do everything we can to listen to your feedback and make sure that we give you more of this great content for life. Compassion is something we talk about often. And one thing that I like to really get out there is anybody I've ever talked to in addiction, active addiction or in recovery, and I ask them about their capacity to have self-compassion, it's usually very low. They're very hard on themselves. They're critical, unforgiving. And sometimes changing that requires the capacity to have compassion for other people first. And I know that sounds strange, But if I can walk into a room and see someone else struggling, and I can show them an act of compassion by being kind or understanding, or giving them a hug or celebrating their milestone or overcoming something, then doing that can give me permission to give myself compassion, because I'll be like, I'm a compassionate person to them, I can be compassionate to others. And we're trying to figure out how to increase that self-compassion, and those open acts of being compassionate in a group setting are great ways to learn how to open the doorway to that type of compassion, or forgiveness, even forgiveness for self. And like I stated earlier, when we're talking about setting goals or accountability, when we say something out loud, it becomes certainly more true to ourselves or accountability. And when I'm trying to be accountable to my own self-compassion or my own self-forgiveness, saying it out loud, to say, I'm forgiving myself, I'm working through these things with a bunch of other people in the room, or demonstrating acts of compassion for yourself while in a room of people, it makes it much easier to do it when you're not in that group. So when you're at home or participating in your day-to-day. And you can see that in people who have spent long times participating in groups and peer support groups, that their level of compassion for themselves and others is certainly improved from active addiction. We might not want to admit it, but most of us learn to regulate our emotional state via others, which we touched on. But when we're trying to figure out how to manage our own emotions, it's sometimes best for us to learn how to understand those through other people. If you were learning to speak a different language, if you wanted to speak Spanish, the best way to do it would be to go to a Spanish-speaking country and go shopping and go participate and immerse yourself into that language. So when we're talking about recovery, emotional sobriety is one of the best things that a person can have, and understanding their own emotions is part of that. So when you want to learn a new language, you want to submerge yourself in it. But if you ask yourself, when do I ever get to participate in watching other people and participate in emotions and understand them fluently? And it's you don't really. It's either it's a real emotion, a real environment with real consequences, or it's not. So when you get to go into a group, you get to watch other people go through their emotional states and participate in how they feel about things. And you can vicariously see, oh, I get that, I understand that, I can see that. And then you also get to share your emotional experience, which then creates your capacity to understand that language. And what a better way to do it. This also helps us to regulate our hormones and the biochemical things that are happening, because when I can practice my emotional state in a controlled, safe environment, I feel safer. That makes it much more easy for me to participate in those emotional states outside of the group, which is critical. So you practice it, and then you can take it out somewhere else. It gives us a reduced threat response when I can share vulnerabilities within a group of people and notice that I'm not being judged or ridiculed, disregarded. It gives us a little bit of time to participate in those without fear of consequence. Many people in addiction recovery are have a fear of the consequence of what the emotions are going to have versus the emotion itself. And when we get to do them and participate with them through us and other people without consequence, it makes it feel a bit safer, and it's not so problematic. We also start to rewire some of the pathways, some of the neuroplasticity of participating in that way. Our reward centers and what's important to us starts to change when I get to do it in a group setting. So that's important for a whole bunch of neural pathways, neurobiological things. So another great benefit of going to groups. So there's a bunch of very practical benefits to participating in groups. Most of them are free or no cost. Some of them have donations, or they pass a hat and you can toss a couple bucks in or chip in for coffee. But other than that, the cost is really accessible. In the 12-step world, there are also groups and meetings all over the world in so many different countries, different time zones, different languages. There's very small barriers to accessing a group at any time. There's virtual and online platforms as well. There's a whole bunch of different types of formats. You can find a list of all the different types by doing a local search on groups, addiction recovery groups in your area, and you'll see what comes up. But there is enough that people can have some variety and do some different things and participate in them without feeling like it's stale or you're going to the same thing. If you live in a, like in London here, we've got a decent sized city, so there's some diversity in the groups, and maybe some small towns don't have that. But you certainly, with the internet now, can access a whole bunch of different types and formats of groups. The other benefit is long-term. It's not something that you just go to once or twice. Most groups, you can participate them for your whole life, and there's people that I've met that it's part of their regular schedule and part of their regular routine, and they have lifelong friends that they participate in the same group for decades or longer, and it becomes part of their regular routine of life and connection. And that's the great thing about it, is they're usually very consistent. I know there's AA meetings in London that have been going for over 50 years, that kind of thing. So there's a longevity there that doesn't always come with some community style supports that are out there. It also gives you a lot of exposure to different types of recovery and different understandings. So when you're in a room of people and they're talking about the things that they do, there's going to be things you agree with and things you don't agree with, but there's also going to give you a more vast understanding of what's available out there. If you're at home and you're practicing recovery on your own, the ability to see the diversity in it sometimes can be difficult because you're only going to see it from your own lens. So the practical benefit is you get to see what everybody else is doing. You get to see what works and doesn't work for other people. And it's very, like I said before, it's a very real-time process. So it's an active practice. So the benefit is you get to practice it and participate in your own life in real time. It's not something that's going to happen in the future or in the past. It's yours right now to take and participate in. So there's some really great practical benefits to participating in groups. I was very grateful yesterday to participate in a group where it wasn't a group, it was a classroom, where a doctor of addiction medicine was participating, and he was talking about his 40 years of experience in helping people with addiction here in the city. And it was wonderful to see the transition and the growth and how that changed over time. One of the conversation pieces that came up within this university class was addiction identity. And it was fascinating to think about how when a person becomes addicted, there's all of these aspects of their life that get entrenched or attached to their identity of being a person with a substance use disorder. So their family, their relationships, their connection to self, their social networks, the things they participate in, their activities, hobbies, start to revolve around that. So it becomes part of who they are. And one of the things that this addiction doctor said was it's important to find a recovery identity. So creating a sense of self that identifies as a person in recovery versus a person with an addiction. And it's not that simple. And so, through our reflections and conversation, we see that a person that has an addiction identity, like anyone, anything that you identify with as part of yourself, if someone asks you to take that away or change it, it's really painful. It's hard. It's really difficult to not identify as something anymore that you identified so strongly with before. And because it's so hard to get rid of and let go of, it's really important that we turn that into recovery identity versus trying to make addiction identity go away, if that makes sense. So creating a recovery identity is more important about participating in citizenship and social networks and participating in a way that makes it so that all of those things I just mentioned that were attached to your addiction identity become attached to your recovery identity. Groups are critical to that because you're going to find social networks and watching other people create their identity and how they do it and when they do it, the way that they speak, the things that they do, you start to be able to slowly create that identity while being accepted and having a sense of belonging within that group. And you slowly start to create an identity that revolves around recovery versus addiction. And that is certainly a softer way to go about it than trying to surgically remove your identity, which you can't do, I joke. But the softer way to do it is to do it with other people while feeling connected. We are so grateful to have you participating. And if you're here, that means that you're involved in your own recovery or the recovery of someone else. And if you want to keep that momentum going, we would be grateful if you liked and subscribed to these videos so that we can make sure that we keep continuing to make more and support the recovery community and hopefully spread some goodness into your home. I think this is a good spot to squash a couple of myths about groups. People seem to have a preconceived notion of what they're about and what happens within them. Of course, we watch a lot of television and we see people participating in 12-step groups. I'm biased. I see it all the time because I work in the field, but I'm watching TV and it feels like every other show has got somebody attending a 12-step meeting, or maybe it's not every other show, but quite a bit. Because it's a really big plot line in television. And so there tends to be some myths and some ideas of what it means to participate in groups. And one of those is you need to be in a really bad state. I'm not bad enough to go to those groups. I don't need to participate in those things. And most groups, the only requirement to participate in them is to just have a desire to change your life and a desire to take your substance out. So it doesn't matter how bad your substance was. It doesn't need to be jails and institutions or anything like that. Like, you don't need to be deathly ill. It's just saying, I've recognized that there's a big enough problem that I want to change my life, and by that you qualify to be there. So it doesn't matter what it is. Some people with less harmful substances, so maybe it's cannabis versus crystal meth, and someone says, okay, well, this is more for people with hard drug problems, not for people with cannabis problems. And it's like, no, that's not true at all. It doesn't matter what it is. It's your own journey, and you're going to the group to learn how to deal with you, not compare yourself to others. So that's a myth that needs to be busted. You don't need to be really bad. As long as you feel like you belong there, you belong there. Some people think it's also a weakness, that therefore I need other people to help me do things. And the answer is, you do need other people to help you do things. We're responsible for our own well-being. We're responsible at the end of the day for our own choices. But when I look at my life, I need people to do almost everything other than, putting on my own pants. But I need someone to make those pants. I need someone to sell those pants. I need someone to fix my washing machine when it breaks. And I need someone to provide gas and hydro to my house. And I need someone to pump, to bring gas to the gas station and grow the food and all the things. So I need lots and lots of people to participate in my life. And sometimes I need a little bit more. And it doesn't make me weak. It just means that if I want to participate in my quality of life, I need other people to help me do that. I have teachers and mentors and loved ones and people that teach me stuff all the time. And that's not weakness. That is humility and the capacity to grow and learn. So making sure that we see that groups are not a weakness, they're actually part of strength and growth, will help you to move forward. So like we said before, that there's all different types of groups. And people think that they're all the same and they all have the same idea. So if you've ever gone to a group before and you walked in and said, I didn't like this isn't for me, and you left, there's 100 other groups that you can participate in that will probably be different or much different. So they're not all the same. They're all different. And because they're all different, there's different levels of participation. So sometimes you have to share, or you're asked to share, but you don't have to. You never have to talk. You can say, I pass, I don't want to talk today, and people allow that to happen. There are some groups that are speaker groups, or things where there's readings and things happening where you just have to sit and be present. Sometimes there's celebration meetings where you just sit and celebrate someone else's recovery, and you're just observing, you're a guest. And sometimes there's ones where you're encouraged to talk and share. So there's one of the myths that we want to be sure to hit is that you don't have to talk every time. And even if you are in a group topic meeting and there's an expectation to share it, you can always just say, I pass. I don't want to talk. It's important to note that groups do not replace therapy. They're their own independent thing. They can accompany one another and support one another. You can have therapy without groups and groups without therapy. But if you have special needs or you have things that you know that need to be identified, specific trauma needs or underlying things that you think are important to address, then groups sometimes aren't the best to replace a therapeutic model. So just make sure that you're talking to somebody so that you know the difference. Really important to note that if you're dealing with psychiatric instability, if you have severe trauma or uncontrollable emotional regulation, or you see a need for individual clinical work outside of the group of the scope of groups, then we strongly suggest that you participate in seeing a professional and talking about that, because sometimes that's not the right place for it. Be safe. So when are groups most helpful? Well, based on all the information I just gave you, you think that they're always helpful, all the time, should always go. And yeah, they're great for creating an anchor and longevity, and participating in them over a long period of time is a great idea. Sometimes it requires an influx or more of them, or making sure that they're present during key times to allow for transition or building new things. So when you recognize a need for all the things that we just talked about, we looked at all the benefits. If you're lacking in any one of those areas, increasing the amount of group participation can certainly be beneficial. The same as if I was feeling weak or cardiovascular decline, going to the gym a little bit more would probably be a good idea, and it would help me to build that cardiovascular strength or whatever it is. So knowing that the groups provide those benefits, you're going to want to increase them during some key times. So people in early recovery, when they very first start, often you'll hear individuals tell people that they should go to 90 and 90. And what that means is go to 90 meetings in 90 days. So basically go to a meeting every single day. I did that. I went to 90 and 90. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days, so I just kept going. It was extremely helpful because it helped me to build a routine. It helped me build structure. I got used to and comfortable around it. There was no more discomfort in getting up and going to a meeting. It was just a natural state of being. So I just kind of got up and said, it's time to go to a meeting, and I would get up and go. And in doing that, it made it so that I was able to build all those other things, the recovery identity that we talked about earlier, better communication skills, more self-compassion. They happened a little bit more fluidly in the process of immersing myself in it. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can find time to do that. It can be a big expectation for many, but it also depends, like I said, on how critical it is. So people who will do 90 and 90 tend to have a more critical circumstance in seeing the value and how important it is. Now, if you're mild to moderate substance use, it might not be as critical. However, if we're trying to make a lifestyle change and create new routines and habits, then the more you go, the more you'll get. I mean, that's kind of common sense. But the process of increasing meetings, or when they're most important, is during transitional times, like I had already mentioned. So if you're coming from treatment and then going home, more meetings might be beneficial. You're making a big lifestyle change, it might be more beneficial. If you're going through a hard time in your life, a divorce, a separation, a job change, going to more groups may be beneficial. Participating with the community that you're building can be of greater importance. And then in the future, when you get used to going to a lot of meetings, sometimes it can be hard to start separating or taking a step back from those meetings. So you have to transition into what's more meaningful to you, and don't make it where you go all the way and then just quit, stop doing it altogether. So participating in them in a transitional way can be good. And then, like I said, you can increase them or decrease them as you need. But then that's part of the job of going to the groups, is to learn when they're important for you. And that's your choice to decide what's important for you and when. And if you need some guidance, then you can work with other individuals to help you figure out that. So in the big picture, in the grand scheme of everything, there's lots of really great benefits. There are some risks that also go along with participating in groups, and we want to be cautious of those. So talk to other people, make sure you know and understand what it means to participate in groups and why they're important and why they're not. And remember, you're not always the expert that you would hope you would be. So asking other people their opinions and thoughts around these groups and how to participate in them is pretty important. So be safe and happy grouping.